My name is Michael Arnold. I'm a volunteer and the State Director for Convention of States Action for Massachusetts.
He's the real deal.
Yes, even in this divisive environment, the vast majority can agree that the need for a balanced budget, term limits, and returning power to the states.
Where it belongs!
What will happen is that representatives from every state will come together to consider how to evolve the most effective, powerful, cherished, and revered document ever created.
I gotta hear him, man.
There have been over 30 state conventions in the history of our country, and none of them have ever run away. We're in more of a threat for a runaway federal government than we are for a runaway convention of the states.
This isn't the agenda of the donkey or the agenda of the elephant. What we're focusing on is the agenda of the American eagle. We have Democrats, we have Republicans, we have moderates, we have conservatives. We have everybody involved with this push for this convention of states, both sides of the aisle. The fact that we made it out of the first committee and the second committee proves that this is not a partisan issue. This is an American issue.
The government isn't going to impose term limits on themselves. They're not going to do it.
This is a grassroots movement from the bottom up, and we're like a rising tide. For a while, they didn't even know we were here, and now we're surrounding them.
Don't just go and sign the petition. Like, sign it and tell 10 friends.
If the Marxists actually thought that a runaway convention was a possibility and it was going to be all haywire, they would have done it a long time ago.
Great point.
There are some powerful forces that are very much against what this is doing right now. I know I don't need to name them out loud to you. You know them already, I'm sure.
You know, because I want my team to know that I'm here. I try to lead by example. I want them to know that I'm here for them. And they do the same thing. When we get a new district captain starting up a new meeting, they go and we support each other. We hold each other up. You know, we try to do everything in a 2 or 3 person team. And that's the key to success. We're like a family. No matter what happens, even if it passes both the House and the Senate this year, it's not the end. We still push forward. We still have to raise up a grassroots army of self-governing citizens. Once we get this through and we actually call a convention, we'll have the army in place across the country. So if something else goes awry, we've already got the army in place. We can call another convention pretty short order once we get everything all lined up.
Let's make history.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have an exciting show. We're going to talk a little bit about the Fourth Industrial Revolution. However, we're going to start out. You'll notice that, do we have the third chair full on the screen? If not, there we go. We have a third chair full on the screen. So we have a guest in the house. And tonight's guest is the State Director for COS in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He has been in this role for 3.5 years. Now, while helping to defend and improve our way of life during his tenure, he makes his living filtering and purifying our drinking water. So he's a good guy even when he's working. His hobbies include fishing and helping others. And his favorite type of food is bacon garlic pizza. Please join me in welcoming Massachusetts State Director, Mr. Michael Arnold. Welcome. We're excited to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Jack, and thank you, George, for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk COS with you guys. I'm pretty big fans of your show, and I follow and share a lot of what you do, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion this evening.
Well, great. Thank you. It's our pleasure to have you on. We're honored. So let's dive right in. Can you start out, Mike, by telling us what a state director does at a high level and where your state is with regard to the resolution process?
Well, sure. As far as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, my role as state director is to kind of look at the broad picture across the Commonwealth and figure out where we need to shore up our efforts. My biggest responsibility as state director is educating the grassroots organization, the grassroots people, the people in our communities to realize what it means to be a self-governing citizen and how to become a self-governing citizen. educating them on how your local town government works, how your state government works, how to build relationships with your local legislator and make them know that you are a member in their community, a voting constituent of theirs. So basically, as state director, my role is education and kind of focusing in the direction of the state leadership team to get us through any particular legislative session that we might be in.
Got it. And how you guys doing as far as the resolution is concerned?
Right now, as of July 31st, our legislator is shut down. We operate every other year. As far as Massachusetts goes, in February, we became the first blue state in the nation to actually get out of committee. So as far as how we're doing, we made history as Massachusetts by getting out of committee. We not only got out of one, but we got out of two committees. And then we kind of came to a grinding halt on the floor of the House where the speaker would not let us be heard. But we're gonna be reaching out to the Speaker of the House over the upcoming months and working in his district and make our presence known within his constituency.
Excellent, excellent. Hey, beyond that, what is one of the biggest challenges you face right now in your role, and how are you addressing it?
The biggest challenge, and I'll go back to this probably time and time again this evening, is education. If you don't know what you don't know, you don't know you don't know it. So our goal, our biggest challenge
That's
right
from
now is
Rumsfeld right
educating the people of how our government works and how they can be an active and interactive part therein. So what we're doing is we have, I think, 10 monthly meetings across the Commonwealth. We have a meeting once a month in 10 different locations where we try to present maybe not the same exact presentation, but the same material. So as my pastor at church would say, so the herd is all feeding in the same field. We try to educate everybody on the same material once a month so that we're spreading the same word throughout the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And it seems to be working very well. We've got a really great group of dedicated self-governing citizens that are stepping up and assuming roles of district captain and other state leadership roles. And it's all based on education. So that's our biggest challenge, and that's really how we're dealing with it at the same time.
Well, that's outstanding. And since you're the first blue state that's made it as far as you have, sounds like everything's running in the right direction. And from what I understand, you're the man.
And Mike, you guys had an event recently, right? Where I know you were saying that the attendance at the event, from a participation perspective, it almost tripled.
Yeah, we had our state strategy meeting a week ago, this coming weekend, and our participation at our state strategy meeting tripled in attendance and participation in it. And our leadership team has doubled in the last 12 months, and our participation rate at our strategy meetings has tripled. So we're definitely moving in the right direction.
And that's all going down in Massachusetts, just so everybody gets that straight. Like it's not. This is just to make that nonpartisan point about what these issues are. Like this is Massachusetts that is growing in support this way, and that does come from great leadership. So,
Who would have thunk it?
yeah, absolutely, great leadership and great grassroots fire.
Mike thunk it, and he's making it happen. He's bringing that thought to life. Hey, Mike. Can you tell us about a success that you've had? If you can, I'm sure you've had many, but if you can narrow it down to one and tell us what you learned from it.
The biggest success I think that we've had so far was getting a true patriot and advocate in the legislature that was fighting for our goal, fighting hard for us. His name is Representative Stephen Exaros. He's from the Barnstable 5th District in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I think the biggest success was bringing him on board. I met Representative Exaros at a Republican town committee meeting, and I had the honor of speaking right after he spoke. And he hears me on the radio, but he had no idea who I was. So he turned around and goes, "That's you?" And I said, "Yeah, that's me." He signed the petition that night, and within a week and a half, he was our co-sponsor, and he was the driving force behind getting us out of that first committee. He really grabbed the flag and ran it forward for us. He's a Gold Star father. God bless him and his family. They lost their son Nicholas in Afghanistan. He was a Marine, KIA. But this man is in my opinion, one of our biggest I guess successes would be that. And the second biggest one would be actually the testimony we delivered in front of the committee that we got out of.
Wow. Wow. Hey, is there anything in particular that you'd like to share with your fellow COS members that are watching, or just our audience at large?
Actually, there is. Thank you for asking. That's a great question. The most important thing right now, and at the point we are in the history of our country, the road, the why that we find ourselves in, is we need people who are sitting on the sidelines. We need you to stand up, show up, and speak up. All right. If we're going to save our country, it has to happen right now, and it happens at the grassroots level. People have been, they keep telling me they're surprised and amazed that Massachusetts is doing something. Well, if you know history, Massachusetts has always been a thought and action leader when it comes to constitutional issues in the United States of America. It comes as no surprise to me that Massachusetts is standing up in our time of need. And it's not a partisan issue. I've told Jack this before. This is not the agenda of the donkey or the agenda of the elephant. This is the agenda of the American eagle. And we have broad support across all party lines. And here in Massachusetts, the unenrolled voter, what some people call independent, outweighs the Democrats and the Republicans combined. And we're getting all three of those types of people to come forward and sign up and join up, stand up, show up, and speak up. That's what I would tell everyone that's listening.
That's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, George, what are your thoughts or questions on what our guest just shared?
Yeah, I mean, Mike and I have gone back and forth in this a couple of times, and like, I'm just the way that you guys organize and the way that you guys operate really does. I'm a big law of attraction guy, and like, I feel like your impact on grassroots and grassroots' impact on the legislature has been really amazing to watch. I mean, 14 Democrats was it that were in that committee, right? So for those that and it's the politicians, right, who try to make it a partisan issue generally. I don't know about Massachusetts, but I know in most states the people aren't seeing it as politics, but the politicians are trying to divide it that way when they do their little debates. So for you to be able to have 14, Democrats in there and be able to hit that home, and I do see it as a home run, right? So the game's not won, but it's definitely a home run as far as, getting past that committee. And I actually had a question about the grassroots. So like, I watch these grassroots from all over the country step up, show up to these legislatures and speak, and they seem so well prepared when they do so. And I'm curious to know, whenever I see someone that prepared, obviously there was preparation. So I'm curious to know, like, how hard are these guys working behind the scenes to make sure, like you said, education is the key, right? You got to make sure they know their stuff. And then at the same time, to be able to go up and speak in front of a legislature, not everybody has that in them. So I'm curious to know, like, what kind of preparation goes into that.
Yeah. Do you guys have a playbook?
That's a great question. I told you that we just had our state strategy meeting last week. Well, last year at this time, we also had a state strategy meeting. And at that time, we started making our strategy for our testimony in front of the committee. So our state content writer, Matt May, I approached him with my idea of doing a prepared testimony from point A to point Z. And he's a phenomenal articulate writer, and he wrote our testimony, and we started practicing it. I think it was either the end of September or October. We started practicing, and by practicing, I mean we were reading it out loud at our monthly meetings. We were asking audience members, would you like to step up and read some of this? And we got interactive participation, and then we started doing video conference calls, and we would call people out of order, and you would only have 2.5 minutes, and you'd have to read a certain section. So we practiced week after week after week, out countless hours. I tell you, countless hours of preparation went into our testimony. And as a result of our testimony and getting out of committee, our state content writer, Matthew May, was awarded one of our Convention of States challenge coins at our last state strategy meeting. And that's a
awesome.
big honor in convention of states. They only made 300 of them, and they're never going to make another one. They literally broke the mold when they made this challenge coin. And Matt, I nominated Matt to be awarded one of those challenge coins for all of his dedication and hard work. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into what you see as the final product of us here in the Commonwealth or in any other state, sitting in front of the legislators and speaking to them.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's obvious to me. That's why I asked it, because like when I see them, I know the average Joe is not just going to walk up and and boldly stand in front. I mean, someone who's animated and whatnot might do it, but to have one after the other kind of go up and speak and do so in a professional, eloquent, respectful way, and that's another big piece of what you guys do that I love is the whole respectful nature of everything, and kind of creating that contrast between the type of protests and type of activism that you see in the news every day, and creating that contrast and showing people how it's supposed to be done. So it's nice to see that, as I watch, and I've watched many of these legislatures while you guys debate, and I'm just always fascinated by that. Hey, Mike, what is that over your shoulder there? I'm curious to know what it is you're reading there. I can't read the title.
Oh, that's a great question. That book is titled Servant Leadership. Every single thing that happens within COS is based on this book. Everybody from the brand new person coming on to Mark Meckler himself and everybody in between leads our teams by practicing servant leadership. This is one of the best resources ever. If anybody wants to take a look at that, this is how you build teams. This is how you make organizations stay focused on your ultimate goal. Because look at the three of us on the screen right now. If we were all looking at one light bulb from a different direction, we all have different perspectives. And this helps you to gel all of your perspectives into one common goal to get the job done. And we practice servant leadership more than anything else. And the entire organization of Convention of States, from the tippy top guy of Mark Meckler all the way down to the brand new district captain that's just signing up.
Awesome. That's awesome. And I'm curious, is that a Convention of States published book, or is that a book that someone can buy right on Amazon?
Yep, you can get this right on Amazon. They actually just made a new copy of it. They changed a little bit of the verbiage of it. I don't know if you can see that, but there's the author's name.
David.
All right, this is a phenomenal resource. Anybody who has a group or a business or an organization, you get this book and you have everybody read it, and then you get together and we have courses on this book. And the way that you get the most benefit out of a book like this is hearing everyone else's perspective on what you read, because everybody gets only what they get out of it. But when you get 6 or 8 people together and everybody's discussing what they got out of that same chapter that you're discussing, it really builds a big, beautiful picture of what that chapter is all about. It gives you a much deeper, broader understanding. And that's one of the things about Convention of States that we really pride ourselves in, is we want to teach deeply and broadly. We don't want anybody rushing through any of this. We want everyone to go at their own pace and their own style, so that they can articulate our message, learn very, very deeply what we do, why we do it, and how we do it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And Kathy Burns here is saying, get ready, get reading, Jack and George. Get cracking. I dropped for everyone watching, I put a link to the book in Amazon in all platforms. So you'll see it if you're on Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook. The link is in the comments for that book. So an easy way for you to jump and pick it up, because it does sound like something that's got to be on my reading list now. I'm trying to get through. I just started, which is kind of embarrassing, I guess, but I just started the Law of Article 5, Nadelson's book. But then I also have the Great Reset going on, which I've been tackling forever and keep getting cut off. So but once I knock them out, this is going on the list. I like to have a nice list of books, because there's nothing worse than running out of stuff to read.
I got to jump in here for a minute. I see something much deeper in my wife's statement there. Get reading, Jack and George. So I'm not quite certain whether or not she's talking about leadership as it, as it relates to business, or is that her telling me, all right, get reading because you got to serve a little bit better? Maybe the dishes more often. I'm not sure. So,
Yeah, it's
so
probably both.
that's
If
probably
I had to
both.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a personal message in that for me.
That's awesome. So I guess so, Mike. I know I mean the tremendous things that you guys have done in with Convention of States Action, in particular in Massachusetts, and I know New Jersey should be coming up. I think sometime soon. Pennsylvania just kind of they should be on their way too, right? Ohio is moving. There's so I'm Pennsylvania is still on my radar as like the one where I still don't consider them a blue state, but like so if you guys get it, you'll be the first blue state. I don't care if Pennsylvania goes in first, but as I watch these states kind of go, I'm wondering outside of those three, is there anything else popping? Like anybody else out there, making waves, or with maybe? I guess my point is to the end of the year. Like, are we dying out for this year? Is this like because we're getting close to the end of the year, and I don't know how these legislatures work late in the year.
Well, I know how Massachusetts legislatures work. I know that we're still open for at least one more state is still a possibility, maybe two more within this legislative session. To be
We
honest
need
with
Rita
you, George,
Peters on. That's what it is.
yeah, to be honest with you, I really focus on Massachusetts because Massachusetts is a sovereign state, right?
Sure.
So I would love to tell you that I'm well versed in every other state, but honestly, I'm really not. I trust those teams and those state directors
Sure.
and the teams that they've built to keep up on that. But I'm pretty sure that we are still on track for at least one more state this session.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And that's fair. I mean, honestly, there's a lot to deal with just trying to educate your teams in, in what's going on in Massachusetts. I mean, I mentioned the last time you were on how I like cling to Rita Peters when these things are going on because she's like the knower of all things state. And like,
Yeah.
she'll give you the nuances of each state and what, and what they're doing and how it's going. And I just get confused as to which states, because I know there's a few that will meet later in the year, but then there's other ones that finish, that are done already. And I'm just curious to know where all those were, but I'll figure it out. It's my job to read that stuff anyway.
Yeah, what you say about Rita is true. Rita is an amazing individual. She's got her finger on the pulse of all 50 states, and it's amazing the depth and breadth of the knowledge that woman has.
Yeah, I can't even fathom it. That's why I stopped trying and I just wait for her to break it down because whenever there's a state showing activity, I just look for whatever video I could find her on, and sooner or later she's going to break down the nuts and bolts of that state and how it works and why it seems weird and this didn't happen and that didn't happen. Like, well, that didn't happen because this state does this, and it's like, oh, okay, like. So the educational process, even just going through this and starting to follow it, has been immense. So I did want to bring up to you, like, I don't know if you've seen the videos that we've put up recently, in particular they've gone kind of crazy on Facebook regarding, because we talk a lot about the Great Reset. We talk a lot about it in context of COS. I never really address it with COS action. I don't know what the official opinion is and whatnot, but I kind of throw out ideas the same way we throw out balanced budget amendment or overturning the 17th or 16th or, all the different possibilities that could possibly come from a COS. And, as I started to learn about this fourth industrial revolution, and if people don't understand what the fourth industrial revolution is, it's basically it was coined by the creepy one himself, Klaus Schwab, who wrote a book on this. But it's actually one of the few things that he's gone and said that's fairly accurate in the sense that the technology is coming, and it's all kinds of technology that's amazing in one sense, where we can cure things like there'll be no more paralysis, and there'll be Alzheimer's may have a cure, and all of these different beautiful things. but like all technology, there's also a very creepy side to it that can very much infringe on our rights and our freedoms. And so I kind of, me being me, just instantly started to, well, maybe, maybe we should start thinking about amendments for this and whatnot. And in doing so, I figured, hey, if I got someone from COS on, I don't know if they'll, I know you're not going to be speaking officially in an official capacity, but I just wanted to kind of bounce it off of you. So for those that have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to Fourth Industrial Revolution, I'm going to play this couple-minute teaser video that I did that pretty much sums up all things creepy with the Fourth Industrial. And then when it's done, I want to get your take on it and what you think just popping off the top of your head, what you think we might be able to get done.
It's much worse to be irrelevant than to be exploited. Those who fail in the struggle against irrelevance would constitute a new useless class. Useless from the viewpoint of the economic and political system. And this useless class will be separated by an ever-growing gap from the ever more powerful elite.
We're in the middle of what other people call the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
The Fourth Industrial Revolution will impact our lives completely. It will change actually us, our own identity.
What the Fourth Industrial Revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
Biological knowledge multiplied by computing power, multiplied by data, equals the ability to hack humans.
And this revolution will come at a breathtaking speed.
Governments, corporations, and armies are likely to use technology to enhance human skills that they need, like intelligence and discipline, while neglecting other human skills, like compassion, artistic sensitivity, and spirituality.
Everything will be integrated into an ecosystem driven by big data and driven particularly by close cooperation also of governments with business, civil society.
Humans will simply not be able to understand the computer's decisions. So even in supposedly free countries, humans are likely to lose control over our own lives and also lose the ability to understand public policy.
It will be like a tsunami. And actually, it's not just a digital revolution, it's digital, of course physical, with nanotechnology, but it's also biological.
Just imagine North Korea in 20 years when everybody has to wear a biometric bracelet which constantly monitors your blood pressure, your heart rate, your brain activity, 24 hours a day. You listen to a speech on the radio by the great leader, and they know what you actually feel. You can clap your hand and smile, but if you're angry, they know you'll be in the gulag tomorrow morning.
What the World Economic Forum is doing is to promote this public-private cooperation to master the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
All right, I'm going to cut it there because it was just getting promotional at that point. But like just as a as a summary, because that even when I was producing that, I was like, this is one of the creepiest things I've ever I've ever put together, and like so. But now that like you hear that, and you kind of get an idea when he's talking about things like, hacking humans and bio bracelets that can, like the great leader gives a speech, but they know, even though you're smiling and clapping, they know that you're angry kind of thing. So with those types of things, like in my head, I'm thinking there must be some sort of privacy protecting, amendment that we can put in, because clearly it's government overreach, I feel like. No.
Yeah, that's kind of a spooky video right there. And let me be honest with you. When I was watching it, I was literally, my brain was thinking about the first human beings that discovered fire. Which is another technology. It probably didn't take them long to think, you know what, we better put a ring of rocks around this fire to protect us.
Right.
And then for years, that was it. And then it took an American patriot named Benjamin Franklin to make the wood stove to protect the houses from burning down. Now we have high efficiency boilers and everything to keep all of that combustion contained. So yeah, this needs to be watched and regulated at some level. Is it a federal level? I don't know. Is it a 10th Amendment issue? I don't know where, honestly, that would fall as far as the United States of America. I don't know where the federal government would have any say in that, or if it's a 10th Amendment states issue. But it definitely needs to be, researched, and something needs to be done. We need to get ahead of that curve before we are behind the curtain or in the gulag, as that guy said.
Right. Yeah. And I get what you're saying. Like, we want to be careful about making this a federal situation. I guess from my real only concerns with it all is privacy. So like, really, when it comes to it, this tech is coming, right? So I'd rather have this tech in the hands of the free markets than in the hands of the government, and letting them be the only ones that can, which is what the WF wants to do. I mean, their goal with all this, what they're trying to explain to people, as they so boldly do, which just baffles me. But like, they just come right out and tell you, like, look, we're looking to master this thing. Like, we're looking to own this revolution. And like, when it comes down to it, those bracelets, those this, those that we're going to own all that. like we're going to control all that. That's all going to be us. And you guys, we'll explain to you how it works later. After. And that's where it creeps me out. So like, for me, like, the only stuff that I'm thinking from an amendment process would be, for example, digital currency, right? Where they want to be able to trace every single transaction, like, and they openly say it, like, every single the CBDC, which is the central bank digital currency, they openly say, like, we'll be able to not we'd like to, we will be able to trace every single transaction in the economy, and like those types of things seem like violations of epic scale. But because they're coming with things like digital currency and technologies, really, that are now, finally getting to realms where I don't know that the founders could have foreseen this. You know what I mean? A bracelet that reads your emotions and knows what you're thinking. Like, that's kind of next level. Like, most times people say the founders wouldn't know that. I'm like, yeah, they did.
Well, they admitted they wouldn't know everything when they inserted Article 5
Right.
Convention of States into the Constitution. That's
Yep.
exactly what Article 5 is meant
Is
for,
about.
for such a time as this.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I guess I'm just kind of bouncing it out there, like, I'm trying to bounce this off people who I know have a very good handle on convention of states, so that when it comes to it, because in my mind, like, just not on behalf of cause action or anything, but in my mind, like, there's easily an amendment or two that can be put in to provide basic privacy protections. You know what I mean? Like, not, who's going to control what, who's going to do this and that. Like, I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of it. Someone comes out with a bracelet that can read everything. Well, someone else will come out with a bracelet that blocks that. And we can, and we can play that game, as time goes on. I'd rather it be that way than have this something that's just, controlled by entities, so. But I don't know. I just thought I would bounce that off you, because it is something that's just very recently, started to trickle into my mind as, like, the solution to this. If we bring this power back to the states, the technology is still going to come, but it ain't going to be, it's not going to be controlled by the sociopaths, I guess.
Right. Well, that's a good point. But the only thing that happens at convention is that amendments are proposed. So anybody could bring that topic up, and if it has merit and it passes the sniff test, quote unquote,
right,
and it moves forward and it reaches a threshold of 25+1 votes to get a majority, and then remanded back to the states, we the people will be the determining factor on whether something like that can happen. But before it gets to we the people, it's going to have to get through the rules committee at the actual convention to make sure that any kind of suggestion like that falls within the parameters of the
Right.
convention. And but I honestly, I would love to speak more on that, but I just don't know what's going to happen at convention. My goal is to get there.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think a lot of people, I do it too, where you kind of start talking about things that the convention will do and won't do, and it's like, in the end, I guess the only thing I really want from the convention is that the process is completed,
Yeah.
and
One of
really
the
in the core, that's what we need,
one of the biggest misconceptions, especially from like the John Birch Society, is that the Article 5, the Convention of the States, is going to change the Constitution. The convention does not change the Constitution. The convention is an amendment proposal process. Once any amendment comes out of that convention with a majority vote, then it's remanded back to the states. Then it goes right back into the constitutional process of the state legislators ratifying the amendments before they become part of the Constitution. So anybody tells you that the Convention of States is going to open up the Constitution to be run roughshod over doesn't know what they're talking about, or at least.
Yeah, and that's funny. You mentioned the John Birch Society, so I know there's some interest because we did a video around for their Scalia video that they put out, and I was like shocked that no one tore this to pieces before. I'm sure someone did, and I just didn't see the video. But like, I felt compelled to just destroy that video. But like, you have a history with them, do you not?
I do actually. I was on a group called We the People of Cape Cod. We were a 501c3 not-for-profit Constitution education group, and the founder of that group was a mentor of mine named Hillard Welch, who, if you don't know, the founder of the John Birch Society was Robert Welch, and that was Hillard's father. And I studied under Hillard for 6 or 7 years, I think, studying the Constitution and did a lot of reading and research with him. And he had me pretty firmly against Convention of States for quite amount of years there. And I was not a card-carrying member of the John Birch Society. Actually, in the area where I live on Cape Cod, there's literally only 2 members of the John Birch Society on Cape Cod. But I was under his tutelage, and I studied many years under him. And it took a friend of mine to challenge my mindset on Convention of States. And he said, Michael, you're always telling people, educate yourself, do your own homework. I challenge you to do the same thing. So I did. I went into a deep dive on Article 5, and I did some research. I followed Mike Ferris. I started looking up Mark Meckler. The Liberty Amendments came out around that time too. And I really did my own homework, and I came out the other side realizing that what I had been taught through the John Birch Society was false. I don't want to say, false. It's just crap. Basically,
Yeah.
When they have a lot of stuff that's really good, but when it comes to their stance on Article 5, it's completely counterintuitive to what the facts are.
Yeah, and
so I left that organization. I told Hillard Welch when I became state director that I was now state director of Convention of States. And he and I never spoke again until the day he died. He just died this year, and he was in his very late 90s when he passed away. But from the day that I told him that I was now state director of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for Convention of States, and he lived less than a quarter mile from me, he never spoke to me again till the day that he died after I told him that.
Hey, Mike,
Yes,
do you know where they get their funding from?
no, I don't.
Okay.
I was never that deeply involved with him. I was just under the mentorship of Hillard, learning the Constitution to teach it, which the John Birch Society does a lot of education. And then they morph their twisted view of Article 5 into that education. So unless you really unwind it and unpack it, you don't realize what they've done to your way of thinking.
Yeah, the John Birch. When I watched that video on Scalia, like, I saw immediately what they were doing, like the craftiness of the selective clips, and then like totally gaslighting the viewer and being like, well, Scalia, what Convention of States Action did was take, craftily edited clips and put. So like, I went in and I watched the whole debate that he did in the 70s. And then I went ahead and found, the clip that they took with him saying, oh, whoa, not a Convention of States or whatever. And I'm like, all right, what's the like? Immediately, it came off to me like, all right, all they're going to give me for him not liking it is whoa, not a convention of states. Like, no context, no question. I had to watch a full hour and a half of Scalia and Ginsburg talking just to get to the very end of the video where he made that actual comment. And it was in context of like a Second Amendment question. And he was saying that because he was saying he doesn't want the Second Amendment to be brought up in a convention. And so, but they left that part out. They left the question out and just left in him going, whoa, not a, and I'm just like these guys can't be serious. You know, they just can't be.
It was misleading, to say the least.
It was intentional.
They're kind of like the Scientology of constitutional organizations. You know, they suck you in with a good story until at the end you find out, all right, something ain't right.
I just don't understand it with them though. Like Publius Hulda and the rest of those dootaroos, like whatever with them, you know. But the John Birch Society, like how do you teach everything else that you teach, and then just go so far off the rails?
Well, that's a good challenge, though. I think that's a good challenge for us because I'd like to dig in and find out where their funding's coming from, because we'll follow the money, right?
Yeah, I don't know that they're being funded by somebody. I guess my thing with them is like, because I hear from different district captains and such that their meetings are being harassed by John Birch Society members, and like they're disruptive. They're doing like stuff that when they explain it to me, it almost sounds like woke stuff, you know, like, but then you've got the other side of the organization that is, you know, it's not like they're teaching, with the exception of Article 5, I don't know of anything else that they're phenomenally off base with. It's just this one issue that they seem to have stuck in their crow and can't get out. And I'm just having fun knocking them around. So I hope they come out with some more nonsense videos like that. Because here's Jim O'Connor says JBS is just being stubborn. That's what it stands for. He's saying.
Can I go back really quick and touch on the Antonin Scalia interview?
Yeah, for sure.
One of the best takeaways from that I saw was when he said we need to go through the process of an Article 5 convention. Whether or not right now, whether or not we get any amendments out of this convention that will be called, if this is going to happen, it's a numbers game. Whether or not we have any amendments that actually are added to our Constitution, the most important thing is that we go through this process to show that it's not going to be any kind of runaway, right? The worst case scenario, we have just pulled off the biggest civics lesson in the history of the United States of America. And we're in the middle of it right now. And that's why the educational process of what we're doing is so vitally important.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, Mike, I have that clip. I actually have it queued up. I'm going to go ahead and let people hear what you're talking about.
All of these reasons have created this feeling, which is real and which I think has a proper basis, of powerlessness. One remedy for that, the one specifically provided in the Constitution, is this amendment process which bypasses the Congress. I would like to see that amendment process used just once at first. I don't much care what it's used for the first time. I think just having it used once will exert an enormous influence upon both the Congress and the Supreme Court, I think. I think we'll get the parameters established of how you do it, what can be done, and I think after that the Congress and the court will behave much better.
Right? After that, they'll behave much better. And he's absolutely right. Getting it done once, especially like, I've heard you talking about, and I put some of that what you said in the intro video where we're building this grassroots army out there that once this goes through and we can get this procedurally through, regardless of what gets ratified and what doesn't, we'll have the infrastructure in place to be a constant threat to the federal government. Like we'll be a constant check on the federal government. They will always be looking over their shoulder at what the American people are thinking. I mean, it just changes the entire mindset of the government.
But that's exactly how our nation was intended to be run, from the bottom up, from the grassroots level up. We were never supposed to have lifelong politicians in office ruling over us. They're supposed to be our representatives. We're no longer being represented. We're being ruled from crisis to crisis right now. And it's time for we the people let me go back again and say we need to stand up, show up, and speak up. We need to make our presence known, our voices heard, and we need to take our country back. And it starts at the kitchen table.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And we kind of talked about that a little offline, where it was, you know, with the schools and the parents starting to get active and things like that. But it's like, but in the end, like it starts, like you were saying, at the kitchen table. Like when my daughter goes to school, she goes in ready. So like it doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter what jibber jabber they start trying to pump into her head. She's just sending me texts going like, "Oh my God, you can't believe it, my teacher just said," or like she'll take a picture of all the like the rainbows everywhere and the communist pictures and the whatever. I'd be like, "Oh, looks like we got a winner here for this class." Like her first day in class, she'll snap a picture of the classroom and be like, looks like we're gonna be up. It's all uphill from here. It's because she gets it, right? Like because I teach it to her. She sent me a picture of a poster. I've put it up on the screen a bunch of times for the show, where it's got like mouths. It says "Welcome to the party," and it's got them all. Stalin's got like a champagne glass, and Marx is doing a backspin, and Mao. And the reason she shot it to me is because she's like, "I know the rest of the tyrants, but I don't know the guy on the bottom with the beard." And it was Fidel Castro. I was like, "Yeah, we didn't get to him yet." I'm like, "We'll be covering Fidel shortly."
Well, and in the upcoming year, why don't you send your daughter in with posters of the mass graves, and she can put the pictures of the mass graves under those people.
Yeah, no, and believe me, if she's too shy to engage in that type of aggressive, like she won't do anything aggressive like that. But like, she's nothing like me in that way. But at the same time, the fact that she notices it and she understands it and she calls the BS when she sees it is good, and she shares that with her friends. So another win, I guess, to put that out
Amen.
there. All right, so we're crossing over the hour. We actually already crossed the hour, I think, didn't we?
I think so, yeah.
Did we?
No.
We're at 45 minutes.
We're good. We're at 45 minutes. We're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I can't see anything. So if I have to look at the clock screen from here, it looked like 58 instead of 18.
Hey, why don't we see if anybody has any questions for Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see what we got here. Well, we definitely have some comments here. So here's Kathy. Great clip. What is this? Bloodline loss? Uh-oh. Wait. Sorry, I'm getting a little sloppy here. It's this one. Bloodline loss, lose of because of war. This might be an international one. Sometimes we get this rough English. England now is not England before. Well, that I kind of understood. So like that's kind of a WEF reference, I think, not a COS reference. But I don't have a ton of questions here. If anybody, I think most of the people on here are at least a lot of them are COS. But let me.
Hey, can I give a shout out to one of the local groups that I work a lot with?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to give a shout out to my friends at United Cape Patriots here on Cape Cod. They've been in existence since 2017, protecting the rights and giving conservatives a voice on Cape Cod. Non-political, party neutral, conservatism first, Constitution as originally intended. Great group. I would encourage everyone go to UnitedCapePatriots.com and check out their webpage.
And let me see if I can. You said United King Patriots?
United Cape Patriots, like Cape Cod.
Patriots. Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I love the nonpartisan messages as well. And like for those that don't know, so there have been a couple of polls that have been out regarding convention of states, and like I'm going to show you one of them. This is not the most recent. There's actually one that came out more recently than this, but for whatever reason I couldn't find the list. But I found it somewhat fascinating that when you get past the politician, the actual politician, and get right down to the people, it becomes obvious that these issues, and I think they were very well chosen, being term limits, government overreach, and fiscal restraints, Like these things are indeed universal, and I don't know anybody who disagrees with them. Like I don't know anybody who disagrees with those three terms. And when the polls go out, they're always showing the same thing, give or take a couple of percent, right? So I think the newer one, that Tarragon one, was it Tarragon? It was a weird. I didn't know how to pronounce her name.
Trafalgar.
Yeah, you go. The latest one that came out, it was I think the Republicans were up to 81% or so, and the Democrats were still over 50%, and then the independents were still in the 60s. So like the consistency of that number continuing on, assuming that we've probably a good 30 to 35% of the Democratic Party is just straight Marxist right now. You know, you've got the rest of that, the Democratic Party, who are still sane people, you know, and so those are the people that you see reflected in this. And if you'd ask those people, you know, if you don't make it a party thing and you just say, are you for term limits? Are you for, you know, are you for limits against government overreach? Are you for, you know, fiscal restraints to get the debt under control? Like, who says no to that? I feel like someone saying no to that is almost like admitting, you know, that you're anti-American.
Yeah, well, the focus needs to be on our commonalities. And unfortunately, the powers that be are always trying to get us to focus on our differences. And so it really does take, you know, efforts like COS to get out there and rally the people and focus their attention on the overarching issues that we have in this country. We'll always have disagreements. There's always going to be people that believe in this and people on the other side that believe whatever that is wrong. That's all immaterial. When we look at the big picture is and it's being recognized apparently by this poll and others. The big picture is simply that the government has gone too far. It's encroached upon our liberties. And we can see what's occurring across the world, whether you look at Trudeau in Canada, whether you look at what's going on in Great Britain just the other day with all the limiting of their flights and so forth. I don't know if you caught that, and I can't articulate the full story, but there's so much going on worldwide. Thank God that we're here in the United States and that we actually have a mechanism that we can execute upon called Article 5. And so for that, we're truly blessed. So let's just keep on focusing on that commonality. Stop using the word Republican and Democrat. You know, it's
Marxists and Americans. That's what we have in this country, Marxists and Americans.
You're speaking my language there, Jack. You're saying exactly what I tell everyone that I come in contact with. We need to focus on areas of agreement. There's plenty of wedge issues that the media and the progressives use to drive us apart. But if we focus on areas of agreement and commonality, there's so much we can accomplish before we ever have to discuss any wedge issues.
So here's a question for you, Mike, like from the comments. So how do you get Dems on board? So being that COS seems like an extension of the Republican Party, even though I know it's not. But I think I understand what he's saying there is like the far left kind of paint it that way, right? Like this is just a Republican thing and whatever. And so, you know, what are your strategies? Because I know you've had success in this area.
Well, that comment is from Robert. Good question, Robert. I've been asked this question before. I've been asked a similar question that says, how do I talk to Democrats as opposed to how I talk to Republicans? And the answer is simple. I talk to Democrats and Republicans exactly the same. This is not the agenda of the donkey or the elephant. This is the agenda of the American eagle. I don't talk to Democrats any differently than I talk to Republicans. We're talking term limits, fiscal restraint, and reducing the size and scope of the federal government. And as you can see from the chart that George put up a little while ago, a vast majority of Americans across the board agree on those 3 points. So it's not hard to get. I think in Massachusetts we have, well, I don't want to put a number on it, but I think we've got over 30% of our support is actually Democrats. You know, and we have more independents, or they're actually unenrolled here in Massachusetts. There's no true independents, but we have more independents in Massachusetts than we have Republicans and Democrats combined. So you have to have a cohesive message to bring everybody together. You need to do what Jack was just saying, focus on areas of agreement. We cannot focus on those wedge issues. We have to discard those wedge issues, realize that they're propaganda from the Marxists and the progressives, disregard them, and work together as Americans to save our country, because we're on a precipice right now. If we don't right now stand up, show up, and speak up, we're doomed.
Without
If
a doubt.
if America falls, the world is over as we know it.
We're the only society, we're the only country that has the opportunity to correct this. Now,
Amen.
hey, speaking of correcting, correct me if I'm wrong, but going back to Robert's question, in my mind, it would probably be, in some sense, just as difficult to approach Republicans as Democrats, given that the John Birch Society since the 1960s has predominantly gone after Republicans with their anti-Article 5. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're very effective with their scare tactics against Republicans. They don't have a whole lot. Well, I don't want to go down that road, but yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think personally that's the most attractive thing about this whole movement is that it is a unifying thing, and there's so little of that going on today where and honestly, like, there are conservatives who are roped into this too, like they just immediately, it's been going on for so long that people just get like fired up and the left will be screaming about Trump even when an issue has nothing to do with. How many times on a post that I'll put up regarding Article 5, somebody starts talking about Trump, goes on some rant about Trump, and I'm just like, what the heck does that have to do with anything that I'm talking about right now? Like, and it's like they're programmed and they can't get outside that box. Like, they just have to. It's like a pre-done response.
I responded to a guy one time that was throwing something out like that on one of our videos, and I said, "Okay." I said, "So if I say Trump sucks, can we now have a conversation?" I'll say it. I don't really care.
And you can't, though. That's the thing. Even if you say it, they still can't. They can't compute that, right? There was a statement that Yuri Bezmenov made. I've used it in a few different clips where he just talks about like once people, about what happens to people once they've been what the Soviets called demoralized. And he's like, forget about them. He's like, they're lost. He's like, there's nothing you can do to save them. He's like they're programmed to react to certain stimuli. He's like, and they cannot think outside of that box. And when you watch people with Trump dysphoria, I feel like that's exactly what is on display.
There's only one thing he didn't say the way you said it. He didn't go, forget about it, like he's from Queens.
They don't use that term in Russia.
Yeah, forget about it.
That's funny. That's funny. All right, so let me see if we have any other.
I saw one question.
Well, that was Robert, unless another one came up.
No, there was another one back there, and it says, why is the John Birch Society so against Article 5?
So here's one with Jim O'Connor. I know Jim O'Connor is a huge. I see him around COS circles online, like different groups and things like that, trying to get the update on Massachusetts. PA is gearing up for a floor vote. That's good. So there's an answer to a question I had about PA. And then I know we covered this earlier, but you can go ahead and give him some breakdown of Massachusetts.
Yeah, as far as where we are in Massachusetts, we passed out of committee in February, becoming the first blue state to actually get out of committee. We made history in Massachusetts by getting out of committee. And then we went on to the House floor where you have to have 3 readings. We had our first reading, we got out of that committee, and then the Speaker of the House kind of shut it down. We don't have a lot of support in his particular district, and we will be putting some pressure on his district in the upcoming months. Our presence will be made known in his district, Jim O'Connor. So please, if you're in Massachusetts, come on, sign up, stand up, speak up. join up, and we'll put you to work to help us get it across the finish line here in the Commonwealth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's outstanding. Okay, cool. So yeah, I guess I'm not seeing that other question in the list here, Jack, but you saw it. So what were they asking?
Yeah, basically, it summarizing, they were asking, what does the John Birch Society have against Article 5? You know,
They
what's
just
their
don't do their homework. You know, they think that the convention is going to be a runaway convention. They think it's going to be a constitutional convention. The Article 5 Convention of States does not change the Constitution. Only a constitutional convention could do that, and we can't call a constitutional convention. We can only call an amendment proposing convention called the Article 5 Convention of States to propose amendments to modify, not change, but to amend the Constitution. The John Birch Society says that our original constitutional convention was illegitimate and a runaway, and they refused to do their homework and go down. We had Michael Ferris went down to the National Archives, and I don't have the book within arm's reach, or I would show it to you, but he has a piece in the Harvard Journal Review showing the original commissions that they went to our constitutional convention with, giving them the authority to use whatever means necessary to preserve the exigencies of the government. So they had any means necessary to save our country. And the only way to modify the Articles of Confederation was by unanimous consent. And Rhode Island refused to even show up at the freaking meeting. So that threw it right out the door right there. And the John Birch Society completely misconstrues, misrepresents, and misunderstands what the Article 5 Convention of States is, how it works, and what its parameters are, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's misrepresenting more than misunderstanding. And I would reference that video that George played for us earlier with Scalia, and the way they cut it up to kind of favor their side. It was very intentional and very misleading. So, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. Public policy. Okay.
You got a book for everything on that shelf, huh?
Yeah, this book right here is what really shifted me away from the John Birch Society into Convention of States, because this is the actual commissions that they took with them to the original Constitutional Convention, and it gave them the authority to do exactly what they did by writing our new Constitution. And the John Birch Society says that this doesn't exist, but the facts are right there. When they come to my meetings and they show up and they try to disrupt my meetings, and I hold up the facts and I tell them, read this and I'll discuss it with you after the meeting, they won't even read the facts when you put it in their hands. They completely ignore the actual facts of the matter, and that, you know, that leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, that whole organization kind of weirds me out. I don't understand it. Like I don't understand. I mean, I get it. I feel like until we hold this convention and get through it, like Scalia was saying, and get the procedural stuff out of the way, until that point, I feel like everybody who learns about this goes through the same, like, I feel like all supporters have gone through this process where you heard about it and then you were like, really? Like, is that right? And then you read it and then you said, wow, that seems like it is right. And then you get attacked by all the doo-doo-doos, and not attacked, but like you get all the doo-doo-doos out there telling you, oh, the runaway convention, this. So then you have to go through that process and like read your way through that. And then after you're done, you know, you're like, okay, this is legit. Let's do it. You know, this is awesome. And like, but you have to, like, because they're out there, they just keep throwing the spikes on the road, if you will. You know, and it's like you can fix the tire and move on, but it's just annoying to have to deal with it. It's like it's at that point now where it's just annoying.
Well, at least it forced us to dig deeper.
It did. I mean, it got me to read Federalist Papers. It got me to read, you know, Madison's notes. It got me to read, you know, a lot more founding literature than I would have read otherwise. Because I really was at one point torn and like not knowing who to believe. And so I started. But what the kicker for me was cause action was sourcing the founders, and everyone else was sourcing like Warren Burger or like some, and I'm like I don't care what it, the Supreme Court is a huge part of the problem. Like, why would I want to go and reference what a justice is saying and such? Like, especially him, like of all people. Like, why would I listen to Warren Burger over James Madison? Like it's like even if he did have something useful to say, I'm not going to listen to him over George Mason or Madison or I mean, when you read it from the founders, I mean, even the idea that the original convention was a runaway was nonsense. Like even that, even after I realized the runaway was nonsense, I still in my head kind of thought that the original Constitution was technically a runaway until I read Federalist Paper 40 and heard Madison's position on it and was like, oh, okay, I get it now. Where they asked the commission was not to amend; it was to what's the word that was used to starts with an R, revise to revise the Articles of Confederation and to create a firm national government. And in the paper, he makes the argument you can't do one with and still do the other. Like I can't preserve the Articles of Confederation and create a firm national government. The Articles of Confederation were designed to not have a firm national government. So it's like something's got to give. I think the way he put it was, do we go after the ends or do we focus on the means? And they decided to focus on the ends. Right. But it's like it was in the commission. It's just the commission was conflicting and wide open. And fortunately, we're not dealing with that right now. We've got very specific topics in there with a very focused agenda, and I just cannot wait until this thing goes through. Like I cannot wait.
Side note: earlier, Mike had asked Jim O'Connor, "Hey, if you live in Mass, join us." And Jim wrote back, "I'm the SCC in Pennsylvania." Not
State
familiar
Communication
with that
Coordinator. He's the State Communication Coordinator.
Got it. Okay.
There you go. Okay.
Now, hey, another side note. Some people try to get into the Federalist Papers and they get bogged down with some of the Old English. There's a media guy named Glenn Beck, and he wrote the Federalist Papers in modern English. He had a guy do a deep dive research on it. So if you want to read and learn the Federalist Papers in language that you can easily understand, go look. I forget who he wrote it with, but if you look up Glenn Beck Federalist Papers, that's a great resource, very easy to understand in modern day English, and it's exactly translated to the original intent of what the Federalist Papers meant back in the day.
Yeah, and they're a fun. I found them to be a fun read. Even they weren't that bad though, as far as the Old English. I didn't think I mean, I was able to. You were able to kind of decipher. I get it though.
Yeah, some people don't want to take that time.
So I'm sure it starts to get wonky at points, but there's little nuances where he'll say things like, even if we were to admit, I forgot how he worded it though, but what he was basically saying was, all right, I'll give it to you. Let's assume that we give it to you that we ran away with the convention. You're still wrong because, and then went on and said, but he worded it, craftily, but people will take that and try and play with that language though. And because Publius Holder uses Federalist Paper 40, like the last line in it almost. So it's like the last paragraph in it to like take out of context and back up her case. And I'm just like, and I did a whole video on that, on her bastardization of that Federalist paper, because like it was just totally wrong. Like, and she takes it out of context, uses a last end quote, and leaves out the entire argument that came up to that point. And like the point that I made in that video was like, in 1787, you're not gone ahead. You don't. It's not like now where you can flip to a certain page or Control F and and go look for a certain statement. Like when someone hand wrote a document, you read the whole damn thing. Like you didn't jump to the bottom and leave out the whole rest of it. It's amazing the efforts that they make to try and twist the logic and twist the facts.
Well,
Yeah.
Convention of States has Publius Hogel or whatever her name is, and the JBS very concerned because I don't know if you guys have seen this, but they've recently joined forces. They were not working arm in arm, but now Publius and the John Birch Society are actively working together against Convention of States.
Good for them, because now we get to knock them around together. Now maybe we could doink their heads together. The runaway convention, the debunking the runaway convention series we did, we knocked both of them around, and like I'd be more than happy. I'd love to get Publius Holder on this program. I would love to get her on here. I will just absolutely destroy that woman, but intellectually, of course, not. But like I will absolutely love. I want her to get on and start holding up all the versions of the Constitution that are going to get. And Soros has one, and here's one from the aliens, and here's one from the. It's like what are you doing with all those constitutions, there, girlfriend? Like none of that's on the table. Like, what are you doing?
That would be funny.
But you see people around her in those legislatures, and they have these concerned looks on their faces. And they look like perfectly good people who just don't know any better. And they're listening to her as if, like, oh, she's a lawyer. Like, she knows. Like, And it's like, come on, the woman hasn't practiced law in decades. And, like, right now, you look her up, and I don't even want to get into her bio because I'm not about character assassination, but it's a fun read. And then you pull her up on Ballotpedia, and it gives you a quick history of her. But when it looks at her political views, it doesn't say independent, Republican, Democrat. It says adamantly something against Convention of States. Like it's like that's her entire existence is to like spew this fake news, this nonsense, and bastardize history. I can't with that woman. But you know what? Whatever. Bring them on. Bring them on. We'll have fun with them. All right. So I'm going to get ready to dial out because we're at now, unless my eyes are totally gone, it's 6:43, right? So
it's actually 9:43. And
yeah, for you East Coast.
Is that right, Mike?
Right.
Yeah.
For you
Hey,
East Coast.
before we go, can I make one more suggestion for people?
Of course
to read?
you can.
Yeah.
If you really want to educate yourself about the foundational principles of the United States of America, grab yourself a copy of the book called The 5,000-Year Leap. It was written by Cleon Skousen. It's the 28 foundational principles that America was built on. You will not regret reading this book. It's a great resource. If your children, get your children at the kitchen table and make them learn that before you send them into the indoctrination camp that we call school. It's called The 5,000-Year Leap by Cleon Skousen. I highly recommend it.
All right. Awesome. All right. So, Jack, you have anything you want to leave off with?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mike. I really appreciate your time. And just to let the folks in the audience know, next week we're going to have the director from New Jersey. And so that should be another interesting conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for your time.
Mike, it's a pleasure as always, sir. We'll stay in touch for sure. Folks, thank you for joining. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to click that like and comment. All of that helps this content get distributed. So until next time, we're out.